In this example, we are going to look at the difference between multiplying polynomials together and factoring a polynomial. So it's really important that we understand what the words mean in the directions above a given problem. So in the problem on the left, we have to multiply the polynomials. This should seem very familiar to you. We did this way back in the beginning of the semester. So when I multiply these polynomials, remember I'm multiplying right now, I'm going to distribute 5x. So first I'm going to distribute 5x to the 2x squared, and I'm going to write this one all out because it makes a really nice connection when we start factoring. Then I'm going to distribute the 5x to the negative 3x, so I have plus 5x times negative 3x. Then I'm going to distribute the 5x to the negative 11. So now I'm going to do all my multiplying. So for my first term I get 10x cubed. For my second term, I get minus 15x squared, and for my third term, I get minus 55x. Now, that's my final answer. Now, since that's the result of multiplication, we call this expanded form. So this would be the expanded form of the product of 5x times the trinomial 2x squared minus 3x minus 11. All right, the opposite of that would be to factor the polynomial. So when I'm factoring, I'm basically starting with the expanded form. I'm starting with something that's already been multiplied. I'm starting with the product of two polynomials. And it's my job to factor it, meaning it's my job to work backwards and figure out what it looked like before it was expanded. So what we want to look for here is called the GCF, the greatest common factor. So you want to scan your polynomial. In this case, I have 3 terms, and I want to look and see what all 3 of those terms have in common. Well, first you should notice they all have a 2 in common. Now, when I say what they have in common, I mean what are they all divisible by? What could I divide them all by? Well, I can divide them all by 2. Hopefully you also notice they all share a factor of y, and they share a factor of y squared. So not just y, but y squared. So I'm also going to divide them all by y squared. Now, they don't share anything else in common. Once I'm done figuring out all of the factors, I can say that I've found my greatest common factor, or my GCF, and in this case my GCF is 2y squared. So you want to look and see what is the greatest common factor that they can all be divided by. Now, we can't just get rid of that GCF 2y squared. It has to stay as part of the problem. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to rewrite each term in the polynomial as a product of the GCF, which was 2y squared, and something else. I need to see what we would multiply 2y squared by to get each term back. So that might sound a little confusing, but let me show you what I mean. So for the first term, if I want to write it as a product, 2y to the 4th would be the product of 2y squared times y squared. Okay, let's look at the second term. I have negative 20y cubed. That's the product of negative 2y squared times 10y. So if I were to multiply those, I would get negative 20y cubed. And now be careful here with the last one. I have 2y squared over 2y squared. That's the product of 2y squared and 1. That's not 0, that's 1. Okay? Now I look at all 3 of these terms and I notice they all share the 2y squared in common. So the 2y squared is going to go on the outside of a set of parentheses, and then the new trinomial on the inside is going to be the other part of each product. So y squared minus 10y plus 1. And that's my final answer. And now we say my final answer is in factored form. So I factored the polynomial. Now, anytime you factor something, you always want to check and make sure you factored it correctly. So we're going to do our check in this space down here. So I'm going to take my answer, the 2y squared times y squared minus 10y plus 1. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to distribute the 2y squared and see if I get back to my original trinomial. So I'm going to get 2y to the 4th minus 20y cubed plus 2y squared. So I know that it checks out. And that is the difference between multiplying and factoring.